Okay, the era of the AI Wild West, it's officially over. Today, we are diving into a monumental shift in global technology policy, breaking down the world's very first comprehensive artificial intelligence law, which officially began enforcement in 2026. For years, AI has just been exploding into every corner of our daily lives, moving way faster than lawmakers could have ever anticipated. So, in this explainer, we're going to look at exactly what this landmark legislation actually says, how it categorizes different tech, and why it's fundamentally going to change the digital tools you use every single day, no matter where you live.
To really get why this matters, picture this scenario for a second. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to find out that an artificial intelligence system just made a massive, life-altering decision about you. Maybe it denied your mortgage application, or flagged you as a fraud risk, or instantly decided you weren't a fit for a job you desperately needed. And when you try to ask why, or you try to appeal to a real human being, your only explanation is simply, the algorithm said so. You have absolutely zero recourse. Crazy, right? Well, before this law, that was our reality. We were quite literally living in an AI Wild West. We saw very real, tangible harms occurring because this technology was operating in a complete legal vacuum. There was almost zero transparency and absolutely no accountability. I mean, we saw real people getting denied crucial state benefits by algorithms they couldn't even question. We saw the rise of deepfake pornography targeting ordinary people, students flagged as cheaters by AI proctoring software that had built-in racial biases, and job seekers systematically rejected by resume screening bots that nobody had ever bothered to test for fairness. Enter the EU AI Act. Taking effect in 2026, this unprecedented piece of legislation stepped up to fill that massive legal vacuum. But here is the fascinating part. It doesn't do this by just slamming the brakes and banning all artificial intelligence outright. Instead, it sets very clear, distinct boundaries around what's acceptable and what simply isn't. It's the first serious, large-scale attempt by a major government to say, hey, the people building AI actually have responsibilities to the people affected by it. So how does it actually work? Well, the genius of the EU AI Act is its risk-based framework. It doesn't try to regulate a video game algorithm the exact same way it regulates a medical diagnostic tool. Think of it like a giant traffic light system. It treats different AI applications completely differently based on just how dangerous they could potentially be to your human rights and physical safety. There are 4 distinct levels of risk here, and understanding them is basically the key to unlocking this entire law. Let's start at the bottom tier, the green light, minimal risk. Now, most of the AI you interact with on a daily basis actually falls right here. We're talking about those everyday behind-the-scenes things, like AI-powered spam filters that keep your inbox clean, the AI opponents you play against in video games, or even those algorithms that suggest what movie you should stream next. Because these systems pose little to absolutely no threat to your rights or safety, they face essentially zero regulation.
Moving up, we hit yellow, which is limited risk. This category covers a lot of the major tools making headlines right now, specifically foundation models. You know, those massive engines powering tools like GPT and Gemini. The name of the game here is transparency. Providers of these models are required to publish detailed summaries of the data they train their models on, they have to implement copyright safeguards, and, this is a big one, they must clearly label AI-generated content. Essentially, this tier gives you the fundamental right to know whether you're talking to a machine or a human being.
Okay, now things get serious. Welcome to the orange tier, high risk. This is where the really strict, heavy rules kick in. This category applies to AI systems used in critical areas that make those life-altering decisions we talked about earlier. We're looking at AI used in hiring and recruitment, healthcare diagnostics, law enforcement, border control, and essential public services. If a machine is making a decision that could radically change the trajectory of your life, this law steps in to ensure it isn't doing so blindly. For these high-risk systems, some massive obligations officially take effect in August 2027. Companies developing these tools can't just release them into the wild and hope for the best anymore. They have to undergo strict conformity assessments, which is basically a rigorous safety inspection, and keep detailed documentation of how the systems work. They have to prove they're minimizing bias by using high-quality data sets. And above all else, they must guarantee human oversight. Meaning, there must always be a real, living, breathing person who has the power to step in and just pull the plug on the AI's decision. And finally, we reach red, the unacceptable risk tier. This covers AI practices that the European Union considers simply too dangerous to exist in a free society. There is actually no regulation here at all, only prohibition. These practices are banned entirely, period, end of story. What's really wild is that these banned practices already became illegal across all EU member states as of February 2025.
The list is incredibly specific. It outlaws China-style social scoring systems where governments rate citizens based on behavior. It bans predictive policing based solely on demographic profiling. Having AI track your facial expressions and emotions at work or in a classroom, absolutely prohibited. And with some very narrow exceptions for things like serious crimes, it places a hard ban on real-time biometric scanning, like live facial recognition in public spaces.
So what happens if a company decides they want to test their luck and violate these bans? Well, regulators aren't playing around. The penalties are massive. They can hit companies with fines of up to 35 million euros, or 7% of their global annual turnover, whichever is higher. For a multinational tech giant, 7% could literally mean billions of dollars. It's a staggering amount of money, very carefully calibrated to be painful enough to force even the largest tech companies in the world to fall in line.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, that's great, but I live in the US, or India, or Brazil. Why should I care what Europe does? It is a great question. And the answer comes down to a really powerful concept in international business known as the Brussels effect. This happens when the European Union passes a tough regulation, and because the European market is just so massively wealthy and important, that regulation effectively becomes the de facto global standard.
Here is how that plays out in the real world. While EU residents get these cool new direct legal rights to challenge AI decisions and demand human review, non-EU residents are massively impacted too. Global tech giants simply do not want the massive headache and the immense expense of building 10 completely different AI systems for 10 different global markets. So what do? They actively redesign their foundation models and apps worldwide to comply with the strictest rules, which happen to be the EU's rules, just to ensure uniform worldwide compliance. It's exactly what we saw happen with data privacy back in 2018. Just like the GDPR forced global companies to completely change how they handle your data on the internet, the AI Act is doing the exact same thing to artificial intelligence on a global scale. Major tech companies don't want the reputational nightmare of deploying a banned practice in one country when it's been declared fundamentally dangerous in Europe. The very tools on your phone right now are actively being shaped by this legislation.
But, as you can probably imagine, a historic law like this hasn't arrived without some serious friction. On one hand, you have the tech industry heavily arguing that these strict compliance rules and heavy burdens on high-risk systems are going to stifle innovation, putting European companies at a disadvantage and driving startups away. On the exact opposite side, civil society groups and privacy advocates are waving red flags, saying the law doesn't go nearly far enough. They point to loopholes, like the specific exceptions that still allow law enforcement to use facial recognition, and they worry that the mechanisms to actually enforce the law are severely underfunded.
Adding to all that friction is a truly massive implementation challenge. The EU AI Act relies on 27 different national regulators across the member states to consistently enforce these incredibly complex rules. Trying to coordinate 27 different government agencies to police code that evolves faster than the legislative process itself, that is a monumental, bordering on impossible task. I mean, lawmakers literally had to scramble to add provisions for general-purpose AI at the 11th hour just before the law passed because the tech was moving so fast.
But despite the valid criticisms, and despite the inevitable growing pains of being the first law of its kind, what we are witnessing in this explainer is a foundational shift. This establishes the core principle that AI is not above the law. It demands that transparency, accountability, and human dignity have to be built into these systems by design, not just slapped on as an afterthought. It actually gives citizens rights in the algorithmic age, proving that no, companies cannot just deploy incredibly powerful tech without any accountability.
Ultimately, this is exactly what it looks like when democracy actually tries to wrestle with rapidly advancing technology. It is highly complex, it is going to require constant refinement, but it's a massive step forward in protecting the public. Which leaves us with one really critical question to chew on as you look at the digital tools in your own daily life. Should your country pass a law just like the EU AI Act?